Hello friends, watch my story till end. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I love my wife very much. I work hard sunrise to sunset for him. Just to see her smile, to give her comfort. To build a life that we could be proud of. But I still remember the light that morning. It wasn't bright. It wasn't warm. It was the kind of pale sunrise that feels like a warning. Gentle enough to touch your skin, but cold enough to tell you something is about to break. I had woken up early, like I always did. I brewed 2 cups of tea, one for her, one for me. The same routine we had shared for years. Back then, I believed little habits held marriages together. I believed love was built in the quiet things, not the loud ones. But I was wrong. So terribly wrong. She walked past me without looking, a packed bag slung over her shoulder, her footsteps sharp and final. At first, I thought she was leaving early for some errand. She didn't say good morning, didn't even glance at the cup of tea I had placed at her spot. When I finally asked, "Where are you going?" she paused for just a moment and turned toward me with a face I didn't recognize. Her eyes were ice, cold, hollow, emptied of every memory we had ever shared. She slipped the ring off her finger, held it between 2 fingers like it disgusted her, and let it fall onto the table beside my cup. The sound it made was so small, yet it echoed through me like a gunshot. "I'm tired of living poor," she said. "You will never be enough for me." That was it. No tear, no goodbye, no hesitation. She opened the door, walked out of the home we had built brick by brick, and stepped into a black car waiting outside. A man in an expensive suit opened the door for her with a smile I had never seen directed toward me. She smiled back at him, the same smile I used to work sunrise to sunset for. That smile was no longer mine. The car pulled away, leaving dust swirling in the air and a silence that felt like a grave had just been dug under my feet. I remember touching the ring she left behind. It felt heavier than metal should feel. It felt like the last piece of a dream collapsing in my hands. But there was no anger. Not yet. Just an emptiness so wide it swallowed everything inside me. Hours passed. The tea grew cold. My hands grew colder. And then the world outside did what it always does. It watched. It whispered. It judged. Neighbors gathered like vultures around a carcass. Some pitied me. Others snickered. They said she had leveled up in life, married rich, moved into a mansion. They said her new husband showered her with gold, cars, everything she believed I couldn't give. And maybe they were right, because love alone doesn't fill the kind of emptiness she carried inside her. But I didn't hate her. You don't erase years of love in a single morning. The heart doesn't shut off like a switch. It just breaks slowly and tries to keep beating anyway. I went to work that day pretending everything was normal. But the world has a way of seeing through the cracks. People didn't ask, but their eyes did. Their silence did. At night, I returned to the house that suddenly felt too big, too quiet. Her chair, empty. Her scent lingering in the air like a ghost that refused to leave. Every time I caught the faint trace of her perfume, my chest tightened until breathing felt like a chore. Weeks passed, then months. Life crumbled around me piece by piece. The business we had started, the one we built with hopes bigger than our pockets, began to fall apart. Customers stopped coming. Bills piled up. I tried to stay strong, but everything inside me was collapsing like a wall losing its foundation. People said she was living like a queen. They told me to move on, to forget her. But how do you forget someone who took your soul when she left? I began losing things, one after another. First the business, then my savings, then my pride. I sold my watch, then my car, then even the small gold chain she once gave me, the only gift from her that ever held real meaning to me. Nights became darker. Dinner became bread and water. The bed felt too heavy. Sleep refused to come. And slowly, people stopped visiting. Friends found excuses to stay away. Failure is contagious to them. They fear it like a disease. I didn't blame them. Broken things frighten people. I had become a reminder of how easily life can fall apart. The day the bank sealed our shop, I stood outside and watched strangers take away the shelves, the furniture, the memories. Every piece they carried felt like they were ripping out another piece of my chest. When I locked the door for the last time, I felt like the world had erased my name. After that, life turned into survival, not living. I did odd jobs, cleaning, lifting, delivering, anything that paid enough to keep hunger from eating me alive. There were nights I slept in rented rooms that smelled of damp walls and hopelessness. There were mornings when I stared at myself in the mirror and couldn't recognize the man looking back. My hair had thinned. My eyes had lost their shine. My shoulders carried weight I couldn't see, but always felt. But even then, even while drowning, a small voice inside me whispered, "You're still breathing. That means you haven't lost yet." I clung to that voice like it was the last piece of me worth saving. The lowest point came when I couldn't even afford that moldy room anymore. I packed my life, what little was left, into a small bag and walked out into the night without a destination. People rushed home to their families, their warm lights glowing in windows while I sat alone on a cold bench with nothing but the ache in my chest. That night, I made a promise to myself. If I survived till morning, I'd rebuild my life from the ruins. I wouldn't chase her. I wouldn't seek revenge. I wouldn't beg life for mercy. I would rise, not for her, not for the world, but for the man who still existed inside me beneath all the pain. That night, with an empty stomach and a heart scraped raw, I whispered to myself, "You were never not enough. You just gave your best to someone who didn't know how to value it." And with that, the first seed of my rebirth was planted. The world had taken everything from me, but it had not taken my will. Not yet. And that was all I needed to start again. Survival doesn't begin with strength. It begins with humiliation. It begins the day you accept that no one is coming to save you. No one is going to ask if you've eaten. No one will knock on your door to say they believe in you. My survival began on the cold floor of a room I could no longer afford, with hunger twisting inside me like a knife, and my pride fighting for its last breath. When I walked out of that place, carrying a bag that held the last remains of my life, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel brave. I just felt empty. But emptiness, I learned, is a beginning if you let it be. I ended up on a bench that night, watching strangers rush home to warmth and safety. I envied them, not for their comfort, but for the simple fact that they belonged somewhere. I had become a man without a destination. But the sky slowly changed, and dawn approached inch by inch. The moment the first light touched my face, I whispered, "If you survive this night, you can survive the rest." And from that morning onward, I stopped dying and started crawling back to life. I took whatever work I could find, cleaning construction sites, loading crates, fixing broken furniture, running deliveries in harsh weather. Grit filled my nails, dust covered my clothes, and people barely looked me in the eye. Some shouted at me, some paid late, some talked to me like I was less than human. But I didn't argue, not once, because broken men don't fight with words, they fight with silence. Every insult became a brick I carried on my back. Every humiliation became fuel that burned quietly inside me. I stored all of it deep in my chest, not as anger, but as reminders. Reminders of where I would never fall again. At night, in borrowed rooms, I opened old newspapers, torn magazines, discarded manuals. Anything that could teach me something. I studied business like a starving man steals bread, desperately, secretly, passionately. I didn't have a mentor, didn't have a teacher, didn't have money to attend classes. But pain makes a brilliant professor. I learned how systems work, how people think, how money moves, how power is built quietly, slowly, brick by brick. Sometimes, I stayed awake not out of ambition, but because hunger kept me from sleeping. Water became my dinner more nights than I cared to admit. But I kept going, because after losing everything, I understood something important. Pain will destroy you if you let it. But if you don't, pain will rebuild you into something unrecognizable. Months passed, and one day, life sent me a small mercy. A friend who worked in a factory offered me a position as a helper. It wasn't much, but it was steady. That alone felt like treasure. Inside that factory, I swept floors and lifted heavy boxes. But more importantly, I watched everything. I observed how the machines worked, how supervisors made decisions, how workers responded to leadership, and how organization built power. The owner noticed me, not because I was skilled, but because I refused to waste a single second. He gave me small responsibilities, then bigger ones. For the first time in years, someone trusted me again. I saved every single penny, wore the same clothes until they tore at the seams, ate cheaply, spoke little. People around me underestimated me. They didn't know I was planning something bigger than survival. I wasn't dreaming of luxury. I wasn't dreaming of showing my ex-wife what I'd become. I was dreaming of rebuilding the man she had broken. When my savings grew enough, I left the factory and rented a tiny shop space, bought a few tools, hung a cheap signboard, and waited. The first few weeks felt like torture. No customers, no recognition, just long, suffocating silence and the fear that I had made a mistake. But slowly, very slowly, one person came, then another. Word of my work traveled quietly, like smoke through a narrow street. Hands that once held a marriage together were now repairing machines, fixing furniture, restoring broken things. Maybe that's why I was good at it. I understood what it meant to fall apart. Work healed me. Pain kept me sharp, and the emptiness inside me began to turn into discipline. Years passed. My shop expanded. I hired people, opened more locations, signed deals I once couldn't even pronounce. The man who once slept hungry now walked with purpose. I often thought about her, not with bitterness, but with a strange kind of acceptance. She had left me to chase a better life, and I had rebuilt mine from ashes. Her absence had become my fuel. Her betrayal had become my blueprint. The more I grew, the colder I became, not in cruelty, but in logic. I learned to trust actions, not words. People now greeted me with respect, but I remembered how they once looked at me with pity. Success changes people, but it changed me from the inside out. It hardened the parts of me that once begged for love, and strengthened the parts that understood the value of self-worth. Then, one day, I signed my first major contract with a big client. It wasn't grand, but the moment I held that paper, I realized the truth. The broken man who sat on a bench years ago had died that night, and something stronger had quietly taken his place. I didn't celebrate, didn't tell anyone. I just looked at my reflection in the office window and whispered, "You made it out." But destiny wasn't done. It was only preparing the stage for a twist I never could have imagined. My company grew into a force that couldn't be ignored. Offers came in, partnerships expanded, and then one day, a deal arrived on my desk, one that would tear open the past and bring it trembling back to my feet. A corporation wanted to partner with me, merge assets, expand across borders. A huge opportunity. I agreed, and for the first time, my company stepped onto the international stage. I had money more than enough, power more than I ever dreamed, respect that once felt impossible. But none of it filled the quiet emptiness I felt when I returned to a large, quiet house every night. Success can build walls, but it doesn't always build warmth. I didn't know then that life was about to show me something unbelievable, a twist so sharp, so poetic, so perfectly timed, that it would bring me face to face with everything I had ever lost, and everything I had become. Success doesn't announce itself. It grows quietly, like a seed buried deep underground, gathering strength in silence. By the time people begin to notice, it's already too late to stop it. That's what happened with me. 1 year turned into 5, 5 into 10, and the man who once slept on cold benches was now sitting in glass offices, overlooking the same streets that once swallowed him whole. But life is strange. It waits. It watches. And when the moment is right, it reveals truths that hit harder than any betrayal ever could. It happened on an ordinary morning. My assistant walked into my office carrying a stack of files, acquisition proposals, company evaluations, all routine work I barely paid attention to anymore. But then I saw it. Axton Holdings. My pen stopped. My breath paused. My entire body went still. Axton Holdings. I whispered the name again in my mind, as if saying it would make the memory less unreal. It was the company owned by the man she left me for, the man who gave her the life I couldn't, the life she chose over me, The man who opened the door of that black car the day she walked away. And now, their company, the symbol of everything I had lost, was on my table, waiting for my approval, because it was failing. A decade ago, I had watched their luxury from a distance. Now, I held their downfall in my hands. But here's the strange part. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel revenge burning in my chest. I felt nothing, just a deep, heavy stillness. Life, not me, had written this moment. My assistant continued talking, explaining their financial losses, their debt, their desperate attempt to be bought out before collapse. But I wasn't listening. I kept staring at the name on the file like it was a ghost from my past. Inside that moment, a realization settled quietly into me. I had climbed so far, so fast, that I hadn't even noticed I now stood at the top of the mountain she once left me at the bottom of. The most painful truth was also the most poetic. I didn't need revenge. Life had done it on its own. I asked for a full report. When it arrived, I sat alone in my office reading page after page. Her husband's empire was crumbling. The deals he once bragged about had backfired. His wealth was draining, his reputation fading, and the company she had chosen over our marriage was suffocating under debt. She had traded loyalty for comfort, and now even comfort had abandoned her. After reading everything, I leaned back in my chair. 10 years ago, I had been a man crawling out of ruins. Now, their ruins were on my desk. Maybe that's why I didn't feel joy. Because life wasn't asking me to celebrate. It was asking me to understand. Understand that everything taken from me had returned. Not as revenge, but as balance. The deal went through faster than expected. Lawyers handled everything. Meetings were held without me. Documents were signed behind closed doors. And in the end, Axton Holdings became mine. Just like that. The man she left me for didn't even know who the buyer was. He was too busy drowning, too desperate to care about identities. He had no idea that the man he once overshadowed, now in the company he was begging to save. That's the beauty of quiet power. It doesn't need noise. It doesn't need applause. It just moves. A few days later, I was asked to visit the main office for introductions. They wanted the new owner to see the state of operations. I almost refused, but something inside me, curiosity, maybe fate, told me to go. So I went. I wore a simple suit. No expensive watch. No flashy car. I wasn't going for victory. I was going for closure. When I stepped inside the building, memories hit me like a wave. This was the world she had chosen. The world she believed was bigger than our love. The world she thought would save her from the life we once shared. But now, walking through that lobby, I saw the truth. The gold on the walls was fading. The plants were dying. The furniture looked tired. The employees moved with stress etched into their faces. Luxury without love rots faster than poverty ever does. I stood near the counter, scanning the place quietly. And then, life delivered the moment I never asked for, yet knew I needed. I saw her. She was standing behind the reception desk, arranging files. Her hair was shorter now, her face thinner, her posture smaller. She looked like someone who had been carrying sorrow for years. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. That was her. The woman who once walked away without a tear. The woman who told me I wasn't enough. The woman who traded my love for another man's wealth. And now, she was wearing a receptionist badge, in a building I owned, with a quiet exhaustion in her eyes. She didn't notice me. Why would she? I wasn't the man she remembered. Time had changed me. Life had carved steel into my bones. I watched her in silence, standing just feet away from the past I had died in. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt something I never expected. Pity. Because life had humbled her, in ways I never could have. Minutes later, a manager called me inside. I walked away without her knowing. She didn't even lift her eyes from her work. She had no idea that every wall around her belonged to the man she once left behind. But life doesn't hide truths forever. It reveals them when the heart is ready to face them. And mine was ready. A few weeks later, I returned. This time without any meeting, without any team. I went because I wanted to see her again. Not out of love, but out of the need to close the last door of my past. When I stepped into the lobby, she was there again, typing slowly, carefully, like someone afraid of making mistakes. Years had changed her. The arrogance was gone. The glow was gone. She looked older, more fragile. I approached the desk. She looked up, briefly, and gave me a polite, distant smile. She didn't recognize me. Her voice, once sharp with judgment, now carried a softness broken by years of regret. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" "Sir." She said it without knowing the weight of that word. I asked calmly, "Is your manager available?" The moment she heard my voice, her hand froze. Her smile vanished. Her eyes widened. Recognition hit her like lightning. She whispered, barely audible, "You." Her lips trembled. Her breath shook. And then the words slipped out again, this time filled with fear. "Sir." I didn't say my name. I didn't explain a thing. I simply nodded and replied, "Yes, you can call me sir now." I turned and walked toward the elevator as she stood frozen behind the desk. A decade of choices crashing down on her shoulders in a single second. I didn't feel victorious. I felt complete. Life had written the ending I never had the strength to create. But it wasn't the end. Not yet. Because fate had one more chapter waiting for both of us. A chapter that would test my heart in ways revenge never could. When I walked out of that building after she recognized me, after that trembling "sir" slipped from her lips, I thought it was over. I thought the universe had closed a chapter with a quiet elegance only life itself could write. I didn't plan to see her again. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need answers. But life always has one more twist. The very next morning, my HR director informed me that someone from the reception staff had requested a meeting with the new owner. He didn't mention her name, but I didn't need him to. I already knew. For a few minutes, I considered ignoring the request. Walking away would have been easy. After all, I had waited years for peace, not confrontation. But something inside me, maybe unfinished emotion, maybe the last shadow of a man I used to be, told me to say yes. When she finally entered my office that afternoon, the room fell silent in a way I can't describe. It wasn't tension. It wasn't anger. It was something deeper, like time itself had paused to watch us. She stood at the door holding her bag like it was a shield. Her eyes stayed lowered, as if she couldn't bear the weight of meeting mine. For a moment, she didn't move. She looked like someone who wasn't sure she deserved to breathe the same air as me. When she finally sat down, her hands were shaking. Her shoulders trembled the way mine had trembled the day she walked out of my life. What surprised me most wasn't her appearance. It was her silence. She wasn't the same woman who once judged me, belittled me, walked away from me without blinking. This was someone life had reshaped, broken, softened, made painfully human. After a long pause, she finally looked up. "I didn't know it was you," she whispered. Her voice wasn't sharp like before. It was thin, trembling, stripped of the pride she once carried like a crown. I didn't respond. Some truths don't need help. They speak for themselves. She took a deep breath as if gathering courage she no longer had. "When I left you," she said, "I thought I was choosing a better life. I thought I'd found happiness, comfort, everything I believed you couldn't give." Her eyes filled with tears she couldn't stop. "I was wrong," she said slowly. "So terribly wrong." And then she told me everything. Every detail. Every truth life had taught her in the years after she walked away. She told me how the luxury she chased turned into a cage. How her wealthy husband slowly became cold, controlling, cruel. How he blamed her when his business started to fail. How he used his power to diminish her, humiliate her, reduce her to nothing. She had thought she was stepping into a palace, only to realize she had walked into a prison dressed in gold. As she spoke, tears rolled down her cheeks. Not dramatic tears, quiet ones. The kind that come from a soul that's finally breaking open after years of pretending. "I have nothing now," she said. "No friends, no family left, no home of my own. Just this job, just survival." Her voice cracked. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said softly. "I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know I finally understand what you were worth. And what I threw away." Her words didn't make me feel victorious. They didn't heal the wound she caused. They didn't undo the years of pain. Instead, they made me feel something unexpected. Tired. Tired in a way that felt like the final weight leaving my shoulders. I told her I had nothing left to prove, that she didn't owe me anything, that the past was over. But she shook her head. No, I owe you everything. I just realized it too late. She stood up, her hands trembling, her eyes red. I'll resign, she whispered. I can't work in a building that belongs to the man I failed. I didn't stop her. I didn't tell her to stay. I didn't say one harsh word. Some endings don't require closure. They require silence. At the door, she paused for a moment. Goodbye, she said, and for the second time in my life. She walked away from me. But this time, my heart didn't break. It exhaled. For the first time in years, I felt free. She resigned quietly. Didn't even collect her last paycheck. Just disappeared from the company, like a shadow fading at dawn. But unlike the first time, I didn't wait. Didn't chase. Didn't hope. When she left, the past finally left with her. Still, for days afterward, a strange emptiness hovered around me. Not love. Not pain. Just the echo of a story finally ending. Weeks later, rumors began circulating. Her husband had been arrested. Fraud. Money laundering. The empire she had chosen had rotted from within. Everything, the mansion, the cars, the brand name, was gone. She was seen living in a small rented room, cooking simple meals, walking to work alone. Life had performed the exact justice I never asked for, and I didn't take pleasure in it. I didn't smile. I didn't feel revenge. I just felt that the world had balanced itself. One night, I opened an old drawer in my house, one I never touched. Inside were memories I should have thrown away. A photo of us, smiling, holding hands, still believing in forever. Looking at it, I realized something that shattered me and healed me at the same time. The woman in that photo died long before she left me. The woman in my office weeks ago was just the remains of what greed had destroyed. I put the photo away and closed the drawer forever. I wasn't angry at her anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't bitter. I was done. Truly, deeply done. Months passed. Then came a night I'll never forget. I was invited to a charity event organized by a local community center. I almost didn't go, but fate had one more sentence to write. When I arrived, I saw volunteers handing out blankets and meals to the poor. And among them, there she was, not dressed in luxury, not wearing gold, not standing with pride, just a simple dress, hair tied loosely, hands rough, face older, marked with quiet exhaustion. But she wasn't crying. She wasn't broken. She was helping, softly, gently, silently. She handed a blanket to a child with a small smile. And in that moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I once loved. Not the one who chased wealth, not the one who walked away, but the one who long ago held my hand in our small house and said we'd face the world together. For the first time, I felt peace. Not triumph, not superiority, just peace. I didn't walk up to her, didn't reveal I was there, didn't say her name. Some stories don't need another meeting. Some wounds don't need reopening. Some lessons don't need witnesses. I watched her for a few minutes. A woman no longer blinded by luxury, no longer trapped in pride, finally learning humility. Then I turned and walked away. She didn't see me, and maybe that's why the moment felt so perfect. Later that night, I sat in my quiet home, the home I built with my own hands, with my own pain, with my own resilience. Years ago, I thought losing her ruined my life. But sitting there with a warm cup of tea, I realized something life-changing. She didn't ruin me. She freed me. She didn't take my future. She cleared the path for it. She didn't break me. She forced me to discover the strength I never knew I had. I whispered to myself as I looked out the window. Life always comes full circle. It may take years. It may take decades. But it always returns everything to its rightful place. She learned the value of love. And I learned the power of self-worth. That was the real justice. Not her downfall, but my peace. And that was the day the story finally ended.